I want to get high, so high, I want to be free to know the things I do are right. I want to be free, just me, oh baby, oh.
Remember when we first met John McClane? Argyle picked him up from the plane and took him down the Nakatomi Tower at the Christmas party. And the terrorists were overzealous, but it was sweet when they killed Ellis. And with a little help from Alan, John McClane kicked ass.
Welcome back to Shat the Movies, the podcast where we answer the question, were the movies we loved when we were growing up really that good? Have you ever caught yourself thinking, why don't they make movies like they used to? Can you still remember spending your Friday night searching for the perfect movie rental at Blockbuster Video? Do you know what Blockbuster Video is? If you answered yes, then this is the podcast for you. I am one of your hosts, Gene Lyons, and alongside me are my co-hosts, Ash the Steak Pit Banks.
Hi, y'all.
And Big D Dick Ebert.
Good evening.
And each week we take a look back in time and decide if our favorite films still hold up. The movies we cover are chosen by you, the listeners, who generously commission the films you love. If you'd like to see all the movies we have covered, will cover, or want to choose one for yourself, please visit shatthemovies.com and have a look. At the end of each podcast, we'll provide you, the audience, with the number of wipes each movie would take to get off your respective butts. So thank you so much for listening. If you have not already, hit that subscribe button and share with a friend. That's how we help the podcast grow. Additionally, subscribe to our sister podcast, Shat on TV, where we review TV series such as Westworld, Taboo, Lovecraft Country, American Gods, Game of Thrones, True Detective, and Watchmen. Find all that information and past episodes at shatontv.com. And finally, to hang out with us live, follow and subscribe to our Twitch channel, shatthemovies.com/Twitch, where we play video games, host watch parties, and do live edits. All that being said, Big D, what movie are we reviewing today?
Gene, today we're going to take a special, sappy trip down Sentimental Lane about our time together. We're going to remember seeing young Ash up at the top of the stairs, and I'm going to remember taking off Gene's training wheels on his bicycle, all those moments that make us a sweet family, as we reminisce our time together and review for Rachel C., the 1991 remake of the comedy classic, Father of the Bride.
Well, Rachel wrote in and said, "Dear Shat Crew, as I write this, it's December of 2020. When this episode airs, it'll likely be nearing the end of 2021. I don't know what the world would look like at that time. This has been a rough year, to say the least. And I think we will crave a little escapism, a more innocent time, a more effortless life, a more idyllic setting. I was 14 years old in 1991 when Father of the Bride came out. My friends and I loved it. I wanted to live in the Banks' charming family house. I wanted to marry Brian McKenzie. As I got older, I appreciated the movie more and more. Now it has become a family favorite with my husband and daughter, and we watch at least once a year. Yes, the movie may seem wholesome and quaint, and the lack of people of color is disappointing, but Father of the Bride is sheer mindless joy. Steve Martin's overprotective dad is still as relevant as ever, and even more relatable. And since you enjoyed the duo of Steve Martin and Martin Short so much in The Three Amigos, I figured you should give their collaboration here a try. I know this won't be a zero wiper, but I feel it's above average and most of all appeals to the original mission of this podcast. Does the movie quality stand the test of time? Yeah, for the most part. And does watching bring all of the nostalgic feels? Absolutely. All of my best, Rachel C.
Well, Father of the Bride is a 1991 remake of a 1950 comedy. It stars Steve Martin, Diane Keaton, Kimberly Williams in her film debut, Martin Short, B.D. Wong, and Kieran Culkin. Steve Martin portrays George Banks, who finds out his daughter is getting married and does not want to give her away. The film opened to positive reviews and became a box office success. A sequel, Father of the Bride Part 2, was released in 1995. Big D, Ash, we always ask what your memories are of the movie we're covering. Big D, we'll start with you. What do you remember about Father of the Bride?
So Kimberly Williams is 2 years older than me, almost to the day. And she grew up a couple miles away from where I went to high school in Rye, New York. So when this movie came out, I was actually a senior, and it was a big deal around the Mamaroneck and Rye because we already had Matt Dillon, Kevin Dillon. They were the big stars, and we were hoping for another like local star to kind of make it big. And me being the awkward nerd, I spent my nights alone listening to The Cure, Depeche Mode, Morrissey and the Smiths, just pining away, desperate that I could find my own Annie. So I loved this movie back then for a different thing. But today, I really found a new appreciation for this film, and I'm really glad we got a chance to review it.
So I think that I have shared enough about my family on this podcast for me to say that my family loved this movie. I think everybody can predict that, right? And they all thought that it was wholesome fun. They loved the sequel when it's like a mom-daughter baby fest. And I'll be honest, I don't really remember this movie. I remembered Martin Short, and I remembered that whole gag, but I hadn't seen it since I was a kid. So I actually really enjoy Steve Martin. So I was excited to watch it, and we'll get into it tonight.
Yeah, 11-year-old Jean and 41-year-old Jean have many things in common, and one of those things is zero interest in seeing a movie about a wedding. Hopefully, Ash, Muriel's wedding will change that for me. But to date, I don't think I've seen a wedding movie that I've been like, hell yeah, that's a great movie. Father of the Bride just frankly isn't a movie I'd watch unless you paid me, and thankfully Rachel did. And Big D on that note, let's hit the trailer.
I used to think a wedding was a simple affair. Boy and girl meet, they fall in love, they say I do. I was wrong. That's getting married. A wedding is an entirely different proposition. You fathers will understand. You have an adorable little girl who looks up to you and adores you in a way you could never have imagined.
Dad, I met a man in Rome, and we're getting married.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
I'm engaged. I'm getting married.
Right then, I realized my day had passed. Annie, it's a little nippy out. You might want to put on a sweater.
Dad, it's okay. I'm kind of warm.
So there's a chill in the air, and you've been on a plane.
Dad, I'm fine.
Annie, it is kind of cold out.
It is?
Yeah.
All right, thanks. I'll get my jacket.
I was no longer the man in my little girl's life. Old Dad was history. I remember seeing someone who looked like Brian's twin on America's Most Wanted.
First, the wedding of our children.
Wedding coordinator? What's a wedding coordinator?
Master and Mrs. Box and the lovely bride.
We're gonna color coordinate with the swans, right?
Swans? I have a great idea where we can have this wedding.
Where?
The steak pit.
I don't think you want the word pit on a wedding invitation.
I'm leaving.
I hope George didn't get lost up there.
He's gonna be fine.
Finally, the big day arrived. The day I'd been dreading for the past 6 months. Well, actually, for the past 22 years. Before I knew it, I had to let her go. Good, I'll just go ahead.
Touchstone Pictures presents Steve Martin, Diane Keaton, Martin Short, and introducing Kimberly Williams.
I'm told that one day I'll look back on all of this with great affection and nostalgia. I hope so.
Good night, Mr. Banks.
Drive carefully. And don't forget to fasten your condom.
Dad!
Seatbelt, I meant seatbelt.
Father of the Bride.
George Banks narrates what he had to go through with his daughter's wedding. His 22-year-old daughter, Annie, returns home from Europe and announces that she is engaged to Brian McKenzie, despite their only having known each other for 3 months. Despite Brian's good financial status and likable demeanor, George takes an immediate dislike to him, while his wife, Nina, accepts Brian as a potential son-in-law. Okay, so the movie opens up with Steve Martin. He's the big star. He's the guy on the cover of the movie. He's kind of in his heyday at the time, right? This is like the early 90s. He's massive. Mm-hmm. And I know Steve Martin is synonymous with great SNL monologues. Like, he's the king of the Saturday Night Live monologue. I'm watching the opening of this movie. Minute 1 goes by. Minute 2 goes by. It's just me and Steve Martin. And I am so bored. Brad Pitt, Interview with the Vampire. He opens it with a monologue. I'm in heaven. Goodfellas, Ray Liotta narration. No complaints from me. But this opening monologue, just me and Steve Martin, it's not written well enough or performed with any panache to be interesting. I would have been out of the theater in the first 5 minutes.
I am so excited, Jean, that we are back on the same page and twinsing again, because I was watching this and I actually wrote down, thank God Jean's going to hate this too, because that was actually one of my notes, because I'm sitting there going, okay, It's just so earnest. He's taking off his shoes. He's exhausted.
Seriously.
He's breaking the fourth wall to connect and make us feel sympathy. I had no recollection at all that this was how this movie opened. And from the jump, guys, I am completely turned off and have no interest in this film.
Okay, so it looks like I'm alone here. This is a solo mission, and I will gladly die on this hill alone. Okay, at least someone on this podcast has a heart. Yes, it's saccharine sweet, but it is a good story. We don't always need explosions and violence and sex. Sometimes we can have a good, wholesome story. And what do you guys expect from George? This is post-wedding. He's tired. He's had a transformative 6-month adventure with the Banks family. Cut him some slack, okay? I'm sorry if he's not captivated. He's not a vampire, or he's not, in Goodfellas, a criminal. He's just a dad who's been through a big, big change in life.
How do we show that he's tired? Well, he's got to be in a chair taking off his shoes, because that's the thing most men do when they're tired. They sit in an armchair downstairs and take their shoes off. No, man, I'm in my fucking underwear walking around upstairs in my master bedroom. I'm not fucking hanging out. Weddings, man. Whew. This time could have been used doing something else, showing us him in his daily life, which they get to and is far more interesting. Him at work, him driving his cool car, him picking up the bicycle. You could give us all the narration there, but but they made the decision to start off at the end after the wedding and do this lame, soliloquy with Steve Martin. It's just bad movie making.
I don't know. I don't know if it was a different time period, but it just felt like it was pandering. And further pandering occurs when they start to talk about Annie. So everybody before this poor girl even comes on screen is talking about how grown she looks. She just looks so different. She finally looks like a woman. She's changed so much. And I was expecting a full-on Sabrina moment where she's going to come out, she's going to be chic as fuck, and she's going to have a short haircut, she's going to be sexy. But instead she comes around the corner and she's this tiny little girl in pearls who looks like she's 12. And I just didn't get it. And then I started going, oh God, are they trying to say she looks different because she had sex? And that's what makes her a woman now? Because, that was a big thing in the 80s and 90s. It's like, do I look different because my hymen was broken? And I don't know, guys. Am I wrong here?
Ash, I thought they were going to take it a step further and she had sex and was pregnant, which would have been great. Right. The camera pans up and she's like, you notice anything different about me, Dad? I was expecting the scene to shift over to Annie, and she's wearing a beret. She's got Fidel Castro fatigues on, maybe a lit cigar, and traveling the world changed her and college changed her. She's supposed to be a 22-year-old woman who's been traveling on her own. She looks like a child who's never made it past the end of the cul-de-sac.
Listen, you guys are acting like this is the grandparents and 16 Candles. They weren't oh, she got her boobies. That's not what this was. They're excited.
No, that was funny.
Their daughter's been abroad. She's experienced Europe. She came back, and you could see the subtle difference.
What?
Yes, if you watched her grow up.
But you hadn't seen her before, so how did you see a subtle difference?
I saw some clips of her riding her bike.
You mean when she was 8? Yes, Big D. She hit puberty and had her first period, and she looks a little different because she got breasts.
Oh, no. She's grown. She's experienced life.
Yeah, she's experienced a D. And she's had sex and is no longer a virgin. And God help us, because that is what starts this reaction from George, right? So I've got a real problem from the get-go with George's reaction. He acts like he's been slighted, like he's been wronged because Annie's fallen in love and had sex. And then it totally hit me that he's upset that he's losing her, but not in that sweet dad way. I get it's supposed to be enduring. Look at George. He loves his daughter so much. But I just found the whole thing kind of stranger danger creepy because he acts jealous of her boyfriend. How many times were we going to zoom in on Steve Martin's furrowed brow and the hand on Annie's leg and the thumb that was stroking her knee? It was gross, guys. It was he's bitch, that's my property. And then to have the basketball scene, okay, now she's paid him a little attention, and so his ego's a little stroked, so he's gonna play a little nicer. I'm so glad my dad was nothing like this.
Are you sipping the Gene Lyons Drop Dead Gorgeous serious tea?
No.
Yeah, don't drag me into this. I've got a distinct position on George here, and it's a little bit different from what Ash is saying. Yes, all that shit he's doing is gross. It is pathetic. He does seem jealous. He is overreacting greatly, but I don't think Father the Bride is trying to make George out to be a hero. He's not supposed to be cool. He's not supposed to be mature. I think the movie's whole message is illustrating how silly and juvenile he's being. He's the punching bag of the movie. And that's why they make Brian great. That's why Nina, the mom, is so joyful about that development, because all of us are too. You see this guy and he's saying exactly the right thing and it seems earnest. And you're like, fuck yeah, like this guy is awesome. And that's why pretty much everyone in the first third of the movie dunks on George. Like, he's a fucking loser. He's not supposed to be cool.
I'm worried about what characteristics you guys value. Ash said, oh, thank goodness my dad's nothing like George. George is a dedicated, loving father and husband. You talk about him like he's a monster. George comes from a long line of overreactors. His mother was one. His grandfather was one. This doesn't make him a bad guy. George is overprotective, okay? In only words. His actions do not match what he's saying. He is all talk. George is a living embodiment of a dad joke. He's corny. He attempts to be cool. It falls flat. And for God's sake, he can't be a bad guy. His dream of his daughter's wedding in that La Bamba backyard wedding fantasy, he's at the grill. He's got the paper hat on. He's serving his famous guacamole. There's balloons and barbecue and accordion player. There's a picnic table. This is good, clean family fun. And you guys make him sound like he's Mr. Wormwood and Matilda.
So you mean his vision of his daughter's wedding is all about him?
It's about family. It's about good, wholesome fun.
It's about the family that his loins spewed forth. It's all about him.
Yeah, listen, when you start talking negative, all I hear, and she's lovely, just the way she looks. That's why I'm drowning out all your negativity and I'm staying positive.
If we get back to the whole touching of the knee thing, this is actually one thing that I've been very uncomfortable with when I am around people's parents. Is like, I've been in relationships where my girlfriend wants to be affectionate toward me around her parents, and I am absolutely uncomfortable with that because the other guy is there or the mom is there, and I'm looking at them and I'm like, I understand this is your child, and please don't think about the things that we do. But I was raised in a family where you ask the bride's parents' permission to propose. Like, it's just a matter of courtesy. Now, if they say no, you're still going to fucking marry her anyway. But at least you asked, right? Mm-hmm. And if people aren't down with that, okay. Like, I understand if somebody thinks it's old-fashioned or silly to ask permission. But in this case, Brian proposes to Annie having never even met her parents. Yeah. I think that's creepy. At least a quick hello is the bare minimum.
So Tom asked if he should ask my dad for permission, and I said no. And then he asked my dad, like, are you upset that I didn't ask for your permission? And my dad said, if you know anything about my daughter, like, she wouldn't have said yes if you had asked for my permission first, right? I'm not my dad's property. As far as the parents go, I didn't really think it was a big deal to meet Tom's family because I was marrying him. I think it's different when you're close to your family. I think it was very important for Tom to meet my family because I'm really close to my family. So if you're marrying me, you're marrying my family. But for him, he's not close to his family at all. And he made that very clear. We'll see them every fifth year. And so it wasn't, I see random people I went to high school with every fifth year. So it wasn't a big deal for me. So I don't know. His family I didn't have to really like or accept, but it was different for me. So I see both sides of it.
I think anytime there's a historical TV series or film made about your family and they're the villains, you kind of want to distance yourself a little.
Yes, please, everyone, go watch Mrs. America on FX. It's actually quite accurate. And there's currently still open court cases about it.
The bad thing that Brian not contacting, he's not from fucking Oklahoma. He's not from fucking Bangladesh. He's from right down the street. Have your parents hook up. Hey, drive over, get a phone number. It would be easy to do. But for me, before I proposed to Vanessa, I know I had to navigate the Latin cultural differences than the gringo does here in the U.S. So I knew it was important for the father to give permission. So I did it via Skype in broken Portuguese with Vanessa's sister next to me helping coach and translate with me. And the whole time I'm bumbling embarrassingly through this, I can just see her out of the corner of my eye laughing hysterically as I fail miserably at my attempt to be chivalrous.
It's not so much like an interview so much as it is just like if I was going to come live in your house for the rest of my life, I might say hello before actually bringing my furniture.
Yeah.
Well, Gene, I'm gonna relate this to something you know. A vampire, you have to invite them in.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like that. You come into my house, you be part of my life.
That sounded like a vampire that was making me a pizza.
I know.
Well, George and Nina meet Brian's parents, John and Joanna McKenzie, who are wealthy and live in a mansion in Bel Air. John reassures George by also expressing how shocked he had initially been at Brian's engagement. But George quickly gets into trouble when he begins nosing around the McKenzie's financial records. Yep. He eventually ends up falling into the pool when cornered by the McKenzie's vicious pet Dobermans.
So I will be very honest and say that the most uncomfortable part of getting married for me was the times that my family and Tom's family had to interact. I would have never left them alone like Annie and her fiance Brian do here. I think that's insane. Part of the problem is our families are just so insanely different. So, he comes from very old money, like they're very typical old money and very like classy. And I come from New Orleans and not money. And so like we're loud and obnoxious and fun and they're not. And, it's this whole differential, right? And so I had an actual panic attack where I had to take like multiple Klonopin before our rehearsal dinner because I was so worried because this was the first time that like my extended family and his family were going to be together. And my dad, who's like the nicest guy in the world, he isn't cultured. And so I was really worried they were going to make fun of him or be rude to him. And I don't think I've ever seen my dad more offended than at this rehearsal dinner because Tom's father. So we had a rehearsal dinner at Elizabeth's in New Orleans. It's just right in the Bywater. It's right on, like you can literally walk out and see the Mississippi River, right? Like you're right there. So we're in Elizabeth's, we've rented out the whole upstairs and they come around with the menu and we had catered like a little bit of a special menu that night. And so my favorite fish is mahi-mahi and like that's what was on the menu. And so Tom's dad goes, is it fresh or frozen? And like my dad came up out of his chair, like clutching his pearls, not real, but like, and he's like, I could walk you probably to where that was caught. Like, I mean, he was so offended. And that began the disconnect between our families. Like, they don't communicate because, like, that was, like, considered, like, they might as well have spit in my dad's face, right? The fact that they would think that we would have a rehearsal dinner place where there's frozen fish in fucking New Orleans. And so I don't understand how they weren't there monitoring all of this because nothing is more stressful when these families merge together.
Oof, God forbid. Frozen fish? Terrible. Just the
well, it's New Orleans. Why would there be frozen fish?
Such an insult. Just out of
it
his
is
chair.
An insult.
I've been lucky with the language barrier between Vanessa's family and mine. Her father speaks, let's just say 50% English. The brother, Googie, speaks 100%. But the mom, nothing. So when we go there, I can kind of turn off. I don't have to pay attention because I'm not expected to understand. So when we did the wedding in Brazil, our two families met and they were cordial enough and had enough common language that they couldn't really insult each other. They didn't get to know each other really well enough to hate each other. If we all spoke the same language, I think we would have some problems, but thankfully we don't.
Did you say Vanessa's brother's name is Googie?
It's his nickname. His name is Wagner.
That's fucking adorable.
It is pretty cute.
He's a cutie at 40.
When my sister got married, that was my first experience with one of these family culture clashes. So my sister and her husband met on the reservation. They invited my family to go out there and meet his family. And you want to talk about awkward. You have not seen awkward until you've seen the sight that I saw. I'm on the res, it's about sundown, and this line of black BMWs is coming like rolling down the dirt road. They open up and there's just Persians in heels and sequin gowns because they're like, oh, we're going to meet the family. And they step into what is going to be this, essentially like an engagement dinner. It's being held at a community center. And they meet the family, which is American Indians in head-to-toe denim. And everybody sits down for a cafeteria-style meal.
That's awesome.
If you know Persians, no.
Are they still married?
They are still married, thankfully. And his family's great. Like, his family's amazing. And I'm not looking down on them at all. Like, I had a great time. I think that a lot of it has to do with the level of decorum in the family. For us Persians, like, everything is done a certain way, and that's just the way you do it. Very warm people, very loving people, but those slights, like somebody implying you used frozen fish, that's a no. For having a predictable theme, one thing the movie does get right is it does keep you on your toes, because in all of these interactions, I had no idea which direction characters would go, which direction conversations would go. As two characters would meet or groups of characters would meet, I don't know if they would mesh, if they would clash. Would somebody say something totally outlandish, or would they be totally sweet? And it kept things fun. Like, you didn't know if Brian was going to be a complete asshole or an absolute gem. You know if the Mackenzies were going to be down to earth or super snooty. And I was actually relieved to see Brian, John, and Joanna Mackenzie just be normal, nice, rich people. Like, they didn't have to take it there. And I think a lot of movies would have bit into that irresistible bait of being like, oh yeah, well, we got to make everybody fucking over the top in this movie because that's what's funny.
Yeah, I have to be honest. I was worried about that too. I was expecting like a whole like meet the Fockers thing here where there was going to be all this drama between the in-laws, but I was relieved it was just a normal family. There wasn't going to be any in-law drama. They could just focus on George being a 12-year-old boy.
Yeah, I think the Mackenzies are the ones who should be worried.
Yeah.
George is like, does he have a real job? Oh, he's an independent contractor. We're going to support. He violates their house, their trust, their privacy. How do you ever build that again? And that leads to my probably only problem with this movie. Everything is so perfect. Everything. No one has any real world flaws or problems. Annie and Brian, they're wonderful, adjusted, loving adults. Both Mackenzies and the Banks, they're extremely wealthy. They're successful. They have great careers. Both sets of parents are still together and they're affectionate. They're loving couples. They're all living a nearly perfect existence. They're living the embodiment of a J. Crew catalog down to the tucked in shirts and the matching family jeans and belt. This shit's too perfect. I'm not saying I wanted Miles to be like a drug addict, but I just wanted there to be some dysfunction that would have been real world.
We want them to like be slapping their wives around or something?
Maybe hint that, George had some infidelity. I mean, the only thing I could like knock him for is that the Mackenzies are like Marta, Esta, Annie, E. Brian.
They were super cool to her. What are you talking about? Marta was like a part of the family. They were they were introducing her to their guests. That's cool, man.
Yeah, I thought that was actually really nice.
She had fear in her eyes. This was a setup. And
Rachel referred to this feeling that the movie has as being idyllic. Big D, I'm with you. This is the Southern California-ness of Steve Martin's 90s library on full display. Like, it's what we saw in LA Story as well, right? Like, he presents these like problems he has to encounter. And when like Larry David does it, it's funny. But when Steve Martin's doing it, you're just kind of annoyed because Hollywood was so far up its ass at that time. And it shows. They made Hollywood movies about people in Hollywood doing Hollywood things. Everything was in Southern California. Everybody drove a convertible. Everybody had tickets to the Lakers and Paul Simon. Nobody cares about your life, famous person.
And before we get the actuallys, it was Maddie, not Miles. Okay, so you could stop typing right now. Put down feverishly typing. I'm going to get that motherfucker.
The Banks family meets with an eccentric German wedding coordinator, Frank Egelhofer. The high price of the wedding takes its toll on George, and he becomes slightly insane. He leaves the house to cool off, but ends up causing a disturbance at the supermarket. He ends up getting arrested, but Nina arrives to bail him out of jail on the condition that he stop ruining the wedding.
At this point in the movie, I kind of feel the same way about George that I do about somebody like Clark Griswold. I think that they're both very immature men. I think they're little man babies. I think they whine about having these great families, these sexy wives, because y'all, Diane Keaton looks great in this movie. She's
Super
amazing.
Good.
And then you still think you're like entitled to all the things in the world that you're not entitled to, like your daughter for the rest of her life. I don't get why Nina puts up with him. I think Nina deserves a lot better. And I think this is just a thing with like parenting, where there are some parents who believe they have children and that they're theirs forever. And yes, in my heart, my children will be mine forever, but they are not my property. My job as a parent is to raise them and release them into the world and then be independent adults that hopefully come back home often and still, are a part of my life. But George, he doesn't get that. He's a man baby.
Okay, so listen, Diane Keaton, goddess. She should be on a pedestal. She is something to behold. But I want you to explain, what more does Nina deserve? What? He is emotionally available to her. He's a loving husband, a supportive and nurturing father to 2 well-adjusted kids. He's financially secure. He lives an idyllic life. Right down, they got a white picket fence. They don't have swans, but they got a white picket fence. Nina and George are in love. They understand each other. And she keeps him in check. George, stop making the face. Stop hyperventilating. This is good news. Relax. She knows why he's acting crazy. Okay? But she knows that's not who he is. She's keeping him in line, and she knows that deep down they love each other. Nina could do a hell of a lot worse than George Banks. I don't know what you expect for her.
Well, first of all, he cannot be a cheapskate. But secondly, he and his daughter fucking leave her alone at the dinner table to go play basketball.
Yep.
Hey, fuck off and eat something, Nina. We're busy. They leave her at the dinner table.
And I love you just the way you look tonight.
Don't try to calm me down because I'm going to get even more pissed right now. Martin Short. I've seen some crappy Martin Short performances. And Rachel, thank you for reminding me of that one good time that these 2 men were in Three Amigos together. And he was fantastic in Three Amigos. But let's look at Martin Short's other performances. Inner Space and that fucking Jiminy Glick character he does. They're both terrible. Franck is beyond awful.
Oh.
Martin Short is so self-satisfied, just yammering and Euro-accented, effeminate babble. And it'd be okay if they just like met with him once and that was it. No. He becomes a major character in the movie. It was a gag that was old in the 90s. It certainly does not hold up in 2021.
Yeah, he's just not funny. And what's a bummer is I remember him being funny, but he's not. He's just really grating. But I want to give a shout out here to a good BD Wong tiny supporting role. I love you, BD Wong. Shout out to my fellow Tulane alum. Roll wave. You're amazing. Martin Short can get fucked.
Yeah, BD Wong got like 3 laughs out of me to Martin Short's -4.
Even just like, are you Frank? And he goes, oh, I wish. Like, just like that line delivery was so funny. And the thing about the parking attendants, that whole interlude was great.
Yeah, but this is another LA thing. This is another 80s and 90s movie thing. You remember Bronson Pinchot in Beverly Hills Cop of Surge? And he's always having trouble. You can't understand him. He's oxofoley. Like it's a thing. Back in the 80s and 90s, this was just, you have to have the eccentric foreign, like some mysterious foreign character who you can't understand. And we could just sit there and be like, ha, he's so silly.
Yeah, but Bronson Pinchot knows how to play the role. He's cool. He's kind of got a little bit of sex appeal. Like he's trying to fuck everybody, I feel, in all these roles that he's doing. Martin Short is not Bronson Pinchot by any stretch of the imagination.
No, not at all. But Gene, I want to take issue with something you said earlier when we were talking about George Banks' shortcomings. You said he is cheap. Okay, so let's go over the finances of this wedding. Without airfare for the guests from Copenhagen, this is $250 a head times 572 guests. That's a total of $143,000. This is 91. Let's adjust for inflation. That's $278,000 in 2021. Okay, big weddings, they're a mistake. It is a waste of money. It's a waste of starting off your life together. That is a house. That is half of a house. When we got married in Brazil, Vanessa and I, we wanted to do something cheap. So we told all of our friends, buy the airfare, show up, no gifts. Let's do it really on a bare minimum. And at that point, the exchange rate was great. We wanted the wedding to be a shared experience where everybody went and had a good time. But it got me thinking, like this whole father of the bride tradition is bullshit. It's garbage. So I did some research. It goes back thousands of years, okay, where the family of the bride will pay for the wedding. In modern day, it's just you pay for the wedding. But 1,000 years ago, an unmarried daughter, that was considered a liability of the family. A daughter, if she had a kid without a husband, that meant we got 2 more mouths to feed. So what do we got to do? Let's get a dowry set up. This is where parents would try to make their daughter more desirable on the marriage market. Basically, they would pay men to marry them. And that's why the bride's family pays for the wedding. It's a way of saying, hey, I'll pay you to take my daughter off your hands. Not just because I have a daughter, but I think this is something we should stop because it does not seem very fair.
I totally agree, but if we could wait till like 2024 to get rid of this tradition, yes. I'd really appreciate it. It's weird to me that weddings can vary so wildly in price. You know, like my mom married at home, my cousin married at the Ritz-Carlton, and both achieved the same end. And I'd like to think that I wouldn't be cheap about a wedding, but like some of the shit people buy is just clearly a scam. But during this movie, there's actually the suggestion, and they make it, you know, in jest, that why don't they just sell tickets to the wedding and turn a profit? And I was like, wait a minute. Why the fuck don't we sell tickets to weddings? I mean, Big D, what you're talking about, your model for your wedding was kind of on that note. Like it's in that direction, right? I think it'd be fucking fantastic for a couple reasons. One is you make sure that everybody's at the wedding really wants to be there. And it's an easy out for people who don't want to go to the wedding. They're just like, oh no, thank you. I don't want to purchase a ticket. You don't have to bother buying gifts that nobody needs. Like all this makes sense. Defray the cost of the wedding by selling tickets. And it actually encourages the bride and groom to actually be a bit frugal because their friends might appreciate that. Like, oh, thank you so much for not getting the fondue fountain and cutting $10 off my ticket price. I really appreciate it.
So if you want to know how our wedding night ended, obviously we consummated the marriage. But after
obviously. You're so virile with your hog.
Oh, after that, because in Brazil, you pay for the bottles even if you don't drink them. So we took all of the bottles up. We had the biggest room it's a small town where she's from, Blumenau. So we had like a 20-person hot tub with all of our friends, my sister, family, polishing off all the bottles that were left and drinking until like 3 a.m. Some of our friends were mortified and said how embarrassing it was. Like, oh, why would you do that on your wedding night? It's one of the fondest memories of my family and friends sitting there at the edge of like the rainforest, drinking and chilling in a hot tub.
Were you wearing like a papi suave?
A sunga? Letting my linguiça hang out? No sunga.
Jesus Christ. With help from Nina and Frank, George becomes more relaxed and accepting of the wedding, particularly when Annie and Brian receive rather expensive gifts from extended family members. The wedding plans are put on hold when they have a fight over a blender Brian gave Annie as a gift, which only gets worse when she refuses to believe his story about George's earlier antics. George takes Brian out for a drink and finally accepts him. He confesses to Annie that what happened at the Mackenzie's house was true, and she and Brian reconcile.
I'm completely aware that this movie is targeted at me as the dad, the sentimental, caring dad. You know, George is laying awake at night. He's thinking about all those moments, you know, where she's growing up. Annie's learning to ride her bike. She's walking down the stairs. They're shooting hoops. I'm the mark. I'm the easy target, the dad. Our sentimentality, you can hit us. Those fucking Subaru commercials where the daughter's like going off to college. He's talking to the daughter and all of a sudden it flashes and she's like a child. And he's seeing his daughter the way she was and now she's leaving. And it's about if you don't buy a Subaru, you're a piece of shit dad, that you don't care about your child and protecting her. And I'm feeling it. I could understand George, you know? George is like starting to have this transitional moment in his life. Who presents this woman? But she's not a woman. She's a kid. She's leaving home. And I realized at that moment that she was never going to come home again. I'd never see Annie at the top of the stairs. They'd never have breakfast at the breakfast table. He'd never seen her in nightgowns. And he's talking about how suddenly he's realizing Annie's all grown up and leaving. And something inside started to hurt. I was watching this and I want Emma to go out into the world. But also the idea of losing her someday, I also had something start to hurt.
Why are you losing her? You're not losing her. My dad sees me in night clothes every time I'm home and sleeping there. And I come out to eat breakfast in the morning. And what do you mean she's not a woman? She's 22 years old.
No,
when are they a woman?
You're not understanding. He's saying in his mind, she will always be his little girl.
Oh my God.
I understand that I'm always my mother's little boy. She sees me as 5 years old. I might act like that occasionally. And yes, he's going to see her, but it's not the same. It's life. People are resistant to change, and his life will never be the same. That family, like the family dynamic, it just won't be there.
Yo, but he should have had this realization like 6 years ago, like when she turned 16, not 22. And she's not dying. She's just an adult now. And the thing is, the way the movie's written, she's feeling the same thing. Like, she's like, I'm never going to like sleep at this house again or whatever. Yeah, you are. The next time you're in town. What the fuck are you talking about, Annie? And I get that this movie is supposed to be about George growing from an overprotective juvenile father railing against being displaced and refusing to see his daughter as an adult. But when George does grow, he's just as unlikable. He turns into this like walking cliche machine. It's trite saying after trite saying with nothing truly insightful or original. And this is going to sound very elitist, but this might work for the mainstream audience, but I can't connect with it. I need something that's actually deep, that strikes a chord with me. I mean, it's why we read books, right? Where you read that one passage and you're like, oh, fuck, that's what I feel. And somebody put it into words. I want what I feel or what you feel, Big D, to be put on screen. And I cannot believe that the feelings you have for your daughter are this simple, and the wisdom that you've gained as being a parent is this basic.
Oh, I'm proud to be basic. I am basic. I am predictable. This over-the-top sentimentality, it's syrupy sweet, but I can't fight it. And again, I don't know how much of that is when I first saw it and feeling lonely and unloved. And now with Emma, I can't explain it, but it just worked. It pulled on my heartstrings.
I mean, I don't get it. Another thing I don't get is why Annie's with Brian, because I think Brian's actually pretty lame. The whole fight between Annie and Brian, clearly it's a plot device to get George to connect to him. I get that. But the dude looks like a tool because he's not upset over his fiance having an incredibly irrational reaction to a gift. Was it a dumb gift? No, blenders are fucking cool. I love my blender. If somebody gave me like a really fancy blender, and guess what? Brian's rich, so I'm quite sure it's not like, a cheap one. I would love this as a gift, but even if I hated it, even if I despise this gift, I wouldn't freak out like this. And I can prove it. My husband is the world's worst gift giver. He's awful at it. And finally, he decided to try again after years of me being like, don't worry about it, because it was just a disaster. He went out and decided to get me a jewelry box for my jewelry. And he came home. He got like totally swindled in this store. He comes in and he's like, I bought you this really expensive jewelry box. It was like a $200 jewelry box. It was a man's jewelry box. It had spaces for all of the men's wristwatches. Like, it had nothing to do with anything that I could use it for. But that's what he gave me. And guess what I didn't do? I didn't freak out. I didn't panic. I just laughed about it. And now it's like one of my favorite things because it was the most bizarre gift ever. And Annie's insane. And he shouldn't be this upset about it.
So listen, Annie and Brian, they're kids. They're 22. I know you two are younger, but I've lived twice the life of Annie and Brian. So you have some experience back then when you'd have a breakup in high school or shortly thereafter in college. It was the end of the world. Oh, the world never love again like this before.
He's 26.
Cut him some slack. He's had protective parents. He's living in Bel Air. How much living do you think this kid's done? Not that much.
He travels the world for global companies as an independent communications consultant.
He's sitting in the server room. He's transfixing code or whatever the fuck he's doing. But listen, I made this mistake with Vanessa early on, and I learned from this. Vanessa, we're having a conversation. She's like, oh, it would be great if we got one of these new Keurigs. These are really nice. Her birthday's coming up. So I'm like, shit, I got the intel. She told me, she's like, it'd be great to get. This is when Keurigs first came out, and they were pretty expensive. So I'm like, she wants a coffee machine. I bought her a Keurig thinking she said she wanted a Keurig. The shit I got from her and got from my family, I was not trying to make a statement of what my expectations were for her as a wife. If you tell me you want a coffee machine, I'm going to get you a coffee machine. If you want a blender, what men are not mind readers. Women spend half their time talking about how we don't pay attention. We don't have a Sudoku out or Sudoku, and we're like breaking down the code. Don't fault us for over analyzing everything that you say.
Can we not just like group all of women in one category and be like, women just don't think about things and they think that we do this? No, like Annie does that, but women don't.
I'm just trying to figure out how anybody equates a Keurig with like domestic duties. Like, I slaved all day over a hot Keurig to make you
Over
this
a pod.
instant coffee. By the way, Keurigs are shit. I hope that you return that thing. That coffee is terrible.
That fucking thing's still going. You know, they say you need to have like distilled water. Bullshit. Tap water, shit's still going.
Bro, you only live once. Why are you drinking that swill?
Oh, yeah, you forget. I don't care. I'm a gas station coffee guy. I'm not Starbucks or anything like that.
Gas station coffee is way better than a Keurig.
Oh, I
At
agree.
least step up to like an espresso or something. Jesus.
I like a French press.
Oh, I'm 100% a French press guy. I'm saying if you need to have your coffee that quickly with no effort, I know what to get you for Christmas.
Mm.
Despite some last minute problems with the weather, the wedding is finally prepared. Brian and Annie marry, and the reception is held at the house, despite a nosy police officer objecting to the number of parked cars in the street. Unfortunately, George misses Annie throwing her bouquet and is unable to see her before she and Brian leave for their honeymoon in Hawaii. Annie calls George from the airport to thank and tell him that she loves him one last time before they board the plane. With the house now empty and the wedding finished, George finds solace with Nina and dances with her.
So, Ashley, in the year plus that we've been doing this podcast, I've heard you talk about an experience, an emotional goosies, you describe them as. When you get like, I started getting goosies. And if you can give me just a little freedom here, it's the final night. It's the night before the wedding. Annie can't sleep. George can't sleep. They got time to shoot some hoops one last time. And it starts to get emotional. And Annie's like, this is the last night in my bed, that whole thing. I'm going to have to clean out my room. This is so sad. My stuffed animals. And George is trying to really now transition into that accepting father. The things that surprise you in life, those are the little things that jump up and grab you, and it starts to snow. And Annie thinks, wow, this is a great surprise. But she notices that George has a reaction. And she says, oh, it's going to cost you more money. And George says, no. I just know I'll remember this moment for the rest of my life. Even just saying that, I feel the goosies. I can feel it. So when they're standing there ready to walk down the aisle and they start playing Canon in D major, I'm not embarrassed to say, as a 40-plus-year-old man, that a couple tears did fall.
This is coming from the man who was immune to the entire ice sculpting scene in Edward Scissorhands.
I was just about to bring that up, yes.
Yeah, I don't know why. I can't explain it. I wish I could.
Most movies are smart enough to just skip the wedding ceremony, or if they're going to do the wedding ceremony, they hit it with like a quick montage, or you fill it with hijinks, something to make it entertaining, because we've all seen a wedding, and in Father of the Bride, we get none of the above. It's just a straight filming of a typical wedding ceremony. I know how a wedding goes. What the fuck was the point of this 10 minutes of them just doing a normal wedding ceremony?
Oh, but I think this was to prove my point. George is not a monster. George is the victim. Poor fucking George. His family sucks. He's outside dealing with the parking problem and the police. He's not fucking off upstairs. Hold up the reception. Hey, grab the mic. Annie, where's my dad? Can anybody find my dad? Why don't you do that? God forbid somebody go find George. He could have been upstairs stroking out on the floor of the bathroom. This poor dude is given everything, and his family takes him for granted.
I think especially in this time period, people like to see the dress. They like to see what she's wearing. I mean, I get it. They want to appease all the people that still want to get married. And so they go see movies like this.
So I don't know if I've ever told this story in the podcast, but it's long overdue. So I'd mentioned before, we did the wedding in Brazil. It was my friends and family, her friends and family in Brazil. So comes day of the wedding, and we had to pick the song for the first dance. So I'm a little embarrassed. I wanted Rascal Flatts, The Long and Winding Road, or whatever the hell it is now.
You should be a lot embarrassed.
They call us out there. We haven't had time to pick the song. It was like that Banks wedding where everything was going a mile a minute. And Vanessa runs over to the DJ. She puts the headphones on and she goes, yeah, that's good. That's good. So Vanessa and I, we're out on the dance floor now. Everyone is watching us. This is our first dance. We're married. And this is what comes over this.
Not white, because my cousin got married and their first dance was to Careless Whisper. Like,
Yeah.
again, I was just like, is anyone paying attention to what the fuck this song's about? My mom's like, no one cares. Shut up.
Yeah, but the chorus isn't, I want to get high, so high. I want to be free to know the things I do are right. I want to be free, just me. Oh, baby, oh. That's the chorus to my wedding song.
Hey, it worked out okay.
So far, yeah. So far.
Yeah, you just keep getting high.
Don't buy Keurigs.
Well, I think one thing this movie does get right is that the end of the wedding is really stressful because everybody's trying to get a piece of you and you don't really actually see anyone. I never understood this idea of people leaving for their honeymoon the day of their wedding, because here's the thing, weddings are exhausting. You're dressed about 4 hours before the actual thing for pictures. You're up all day getting ready. I had my dress specially made and it had boning like below my hips, so I couldn't sit in my dress because like once I was like corseted up in it, like I had to like lean, I couldn't sit. And I actually had a panic attack at one point because I realized I wasn't going to be able to get out of it until like 11 o'clock that night. And it's the truth, because you got the ceremony, you got the reception, you got the toast, you got the emotions. It's just a lot. So what do you do after a wedding? You go to sleep. You can get up the next day and do what we did, which is have brunch in the morning with the people you love, and then you can go about your way. That's why you're not making dramatic calls from the airport to your dad before leaving.
Did you consummate the marriage, though?
Well, of course we consummated the marriage.
Tom struggled with the jewelry box. I wanted to make sure he wasn't struggling with everything.
No, he got the other box just fine.
As Ashley silently rolls her eyes off camera.
I'm on the record, I think, on this podcast saying how much I hate brunch. I'm a breakfast person. But Ash, I agree with you. One of my favorite things that not enough couples do is the day after the wedding brunch. I have more fun at those, honestly, and hang out with the bride and groom more then, because all the shitheads have already flown home, right? Yeah. Like they're like, oh, we're going to get out in the morning, whatever. So they're out of there. And it's just like the cool people hanging out in like comfortable clothes.
The pressure's off.
Eating, drinking, and having a good time. And that's when you actually get to really like get to know people and make real friends. So everybody just skip the reception, do a jazz brunch for your wedding, and enjoy yourselves. Anyway, now is the time when we give our Shat score for Father of the Bride. The wipe score is our way of telling you how many wipes this movie would take to get off your respective butts. 0 wipes is a perfect movie. It's owning your own shoe company in Southern California while your wife also is an entrepreneur. You live in a big ass house and you got tickets to the Lakers and Paul Simon. 5 wipes is frozen mahi mahi. Big D, we'll start with you. What is your wipe score for Father of the Bride?
When I first watched Father of the Bride as a teenager, it hit me completely different. I was not really sympathetic to George or the emotional situation he was going through. I just saw, it's a couple in love. That would be great to experience love. But now as an adult, or close to an adult, and the father of a daughter of my own, I have complete empathy for George. We were kindred spirits. But regardless of whether you're a parent or not, I think this movie still, it's lighthearted enough. It's a fun ride. It's no stress. It goes over the wedding. And you know what? It just covers that major transition in life that everybody kind of goes through when you realize that things will never be the same. And for me, it's the knowledge that one day, inevitably, hopefully, that Emma will grow up and she'll head out into the world on her own and find her own path, and I'll deal with it that day. This movie had the effect that I'm going to try to value every day. Much like Steve W. with Hook, I think this is a better message where I'm going to focus on enjoying those moments because they are fleeting and they won't be here forever. This is a 0.75 white movie for me.
This movie, to me, was the cinematic equivalent of wedding cake. It's there because it's supposed to be there. Like, this movie needed to exist apparently in the 90s. It's expected to exist. Everyone's going to have a bite. It's in the theater. You'll go watch it, but nobody's super excited for it. It's not exciting. It's not original, but maybe with a cup of coffee, it's edible. I admittedly chuckled a few times during this movie, but the whole thing can be summed up in like 3 sentences with no need for an entire film to be made. Steve Martin is possessive about his daughter. She meets a nice guy. It all works out. The end. We didn't need to make a movie about it. 3.5 wipes for me.
Yeah. I mean, is this the worst movie we've ever reviewed? No. Is it the best? It kind of sucked. It's a wedding movie without any romance. It's a wedding movie about the father of the girl getting married. And I don't know why anybody cares about the father of the bride. I don't care about movies about the mother of the bride, much less the father of the bride. I think all those things are boring. This is boring. I think George is not a great character. Twins in with you, Gene. 3.5 wipes.
All right, with 3.5 wipes from Ash, 3.5 wipes from me, and 3/4 of a wipe from Big D, that gives us an average wipe score of 2.583 repeating for Father of the Bride.
So, Gene, with a horrible score that was tainted by you two cold-hearted, just stick in the muds of 2.58 repeating wipes, that ties Father of the Bride in the 150 spot with Weekend at Bernie's and Adventures in Babysitting. Slightly better than Pretty Woman and Top Gun, slightly worse than The Fifth Element and The Full Monty.
You're telling me you think this movie is better than Top Gun?
No, I didn't say that.
Okay, but your score made it that.
I'm comfortable with it.
What did you give Top Gun?
Top Gun, I gave a wow. Let's see, what is that? Hold on, sorry.
It's a number. What number is it?
Okay, it's that one. Hold on, Top Gun.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Sorry.
The hypocrisy is coming.
What was it?
Everybody pull your cars over to the side of the road.
Oh,
slow down.
I gave that a 2.5.
Okay.
Roger gave it a 3.5. I don't even know what was going on there.
Wow.
Let me see what Gene did.
Yeah. What did I do?
Okay, let's see. Gene gave Top Gun a 2 wipe for Gene.
Yeah. Playing with them boys.
Playing with the boys.
Damn boys.
I'm glad we're booked at least into 2023 because we won't be getting any more commissions after your fucking score on this. Except Rachel. Rachel will keep commissioning movies. She's like, Big D, you get me. You really get me.
Anyone out there with a heart, send your commissions to Big D, the sentimental lug of Shat Movies.
That's the new podcast?
Yeah. Sentimentality with Big D.
Oh, my God.
All right, Mr. Sentimental, what do we have coming up next week?
Well, Gene, next week we're going to take a venture down into the animated realm, which we haven't done in a long time. In this animated feature set in the 1940s, the troubled yet iconic Batman is pitted against a notorious figure who is robbing out Gotham's most dangerous criminals, and who many believe is the caped crusader himself. Batman's alter ego, millionaire Bruce Wayne, is about to get married to the lovely Andrea Beaumont, who helps him recover from his need to revenge his parents' murder, meaning his crime-fighting days may be numbered. Commissioned by Alex P. back in December of 2020. This was released in 1993, and it's one of the few animated films we've done.
I really hope it's not so much about Batman as it is his dad in the days before his wedding.
And how his dad was just exhausted by it.
Or maybe Alfred, I guess, is a stand-in for his dad.
And the number of hot dog buns and hot dogs.
Oh, Master Bruce.
What a terrible accent.
That was terrible.
Jesus.
I'm torn between three different Alfreds.
Yeah, I don't think that's an excuse. That was just awful.
Awful.
Well, it's way better than my Morgan Freeman.
Fair.
No, I wouldn't even go there. And listen, I know this isn't our lane, but I'm saying, Gene, Ash, I will fly out to wherever you are. Let's do the new Top Gun when it comes out. Let's do a special episode. This is the one movie that would make us go outside the realm to something new.
Only if we get to sing the song.
Hanging with them boys?
Playing.
Oh. Hanging with them boys. Different song.
Hanging.
You get
with
the idea.
Them boys.
Them boys. Yeah,
Hanging with them boys is about you and your Brazilian sunga in the hot tub. Getting trashed. All right. Well, thank you, Alex, for that upcoming commission. And thank you, Rachel, for this commission. Thank you to all our commissioners who make the podcast possible. That concludes this week's episode of Shat the Movies. Be sure to follow us on social media and share with a friend. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, and Instagram at Shat the Movies. You can email us, host@shatthemovies.com. Support the podcast by shopping our Amazon affiliate link, buying our merch, or by commissioning your own movie. Find all that information by visiting our website, shatthemovies.com. Also, you can check out our sister podcast, Shat on TV, where we review TV series such as Lovecraft Country, Westworld, True Detective, Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, and Watchmen. Find all that information on our website, shatontv.com, wherever fine podcasts can be found, including iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and YouTube. Be sure to subscribe. And if you stop by iTunes, please leave a 5-star review. That helps the podcast grow. On behalf of my co-hosts, Ash and Big D, I'm Gene Lyons. Be sure to join us next week for the following movie.
This Christmas, for the first time, America's most exciting and legendary motion picture hero comes to the screen like you've never seen him before.
The Bat!
In an all-new, larger-than-life feature film. Now, the Dark Knight confronts his newest and most menacing villain.
Your angel of death awaits.
The Phantasm.
I want you.
And faces his greatest danger.
Can't be too careful with all those weirdos around.
A soaring new adventure. Batman, Mask of the Phantasm. The animated movie. Coming for a Christmas you'll never forget.